Hey movie fans, so in the last video we talked about the core roster members of the upcoming Teen Titans movie, the ones that I think will be on the team. Not necessarily the names that I want, but the names that I think, looking at the Easter eggs and references that are already in the DC universe, the Titans that I think we could be getting on the big screen at some point. So after that video, I left it up to you guys what you wanted me to do for the next video, and you overwhelmingly wanted me to do basically what I did for the Titans video, but do it for the Justice League. And yeah, I don't blame you. I'm super curious as to what the direction is for this upcoming Justice League that has not been announced, but come on, we're in this new DC universe. There has to be a Justice League movie at some point. Granted, it could be 3 or 4, 5 years away, but looking at the current state of the DC universe, I'm going to try and give you my best thoughts, theories, and predictions as to the 7 members that I think will make up the main Justice League. We'll go into a little bit more detail of why I think it'll be the main Justice League candidate a little bit here. But before we dive into all that, what are the 7 names that you think must be in a Justice League movie? Or some names that you just really, really want? What are some out of left field picks that you don't see talked about enough that you really want to be on a Justice League movie at some point? Let's look at what James Gunn has talked about as an influence, because I think that'll be a big indicator as the direction for his Justice League. When he was first announcing projects in this new DC universe that he's working on, he said one of his big inspirations was the Bruce Timm verse, the old animated stuff from the 90s and 2000s. So like Batman animated series, Superman animated series, and of course, Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. I think when we get a Justice League movie eventually, I see it being an already established organization, and I think that's super, super cool. But I think we get more of the Justice League Unlimited approach of having a massive roster of characters and heroes and honing on a specific 7 of those heroes, if that makes sense. Then for other projects, whether that's sequels or maybe even spin-offs, we can pick other members of the Justice League and focus on them, because the thing is, there's been so many heroes that have been attached to the Justice League in one way, shape, or form. But for the sake of telling a good, cohesive story, you've got to whittle it down to about 6 or 7 characters before people start kind of zoning out and saying that there's too many main characters. So I think 7 is like the perfect number of, all right, these are our main characters, so to speak. So before we get into this main 7, let's talk about the outside shots, the ones that I don't think will actually be in the movie, but you never fully rule anything out just yet. And the first name I gotta bring up is Green Arrow, just because, oh man, I love Green Arrow. Green Arrow is one of my favorites. I love Green Arrow, but apparently so does James Gunn. Apparently James Gunn is a big Green Arrow fan, but it's a little up in the air because someone asked him about the Green Arrow Easter egg reference in the first season of Peacemaker, and he's like, yeah, we don't really know right now if Green Arrow is canon to the DC universe, so yeah. Or we don't know Green Arrow's current place in the DC universe is probably a better way to phrase that. So I kind of have my doubts that we'll see Green Arrow anytime soon, which kind of sucks, but maybe he could be playing us. Maybe Green Arrow shows up in the second half of Peacemaker Season 2, because apparently the last 3 episodes of Peacemaker Season 2 are being kept under lock and key and like have some major surprises that only even James Gunn knows about. So maybe one of them's Green Arrow. I've been saying for a little bit now that I think Green Arrow shows up in Peacemaker Season 2. When Peacemaker Season 2 is done, come back to this video and either let me know that I was wildly off base or I was right on the money. Next up for names that I think could be an outside shot but might be in there to some degree is one that I want to throw out there just to admit that I was wrong, and I thank you guys for pointing stuff out to me in the comments in the previous video. So in the last video, I said that we didn't know what the current state of magic was in the DC universe, and a couple of you were like, no, we actually do. And I was like, oh yeah, Creature Commandos is the thing where they faced off against a magical being. But then some others of you, the eagle-eyed ones of you, pointed out that in the mural in Superman, the Hall of Justice mural with all the old heroes, we see Zatara, father of Zatanna, who is on my list for outside shot that could potentially be in Justice League, but I wouldn't put money on it, but it could be interesting. I really like Zatanna. I think that character has so much possibility and versatility as well. You kind of can slot Zatanna in wherever. Teen Titans? Sure, I can buy that. Justice League? Yeah, sure, I absolutely buy that too. Plus, if you introduce Zatanna now, you can kind of use her to spin off into the Justice League Dark project that's been in development forever now. Guys, we were supposed to get a Justice League Dark directed by Guillermo del Toro, and every day that I think about that project, I get a little sad that it never happened. But we could have that with Zatanna, John Constantine, Swamp Thing, which supposedly is getting a movie, but James Mangold hasn't given any update on that whatsoever. Swamp Thing, Edrican, Deadman. Please, I just want Justice League Dark. I think that could be a fun spinoff to the core Justice League and have Zatanna be like the more normal attachment to our mainline Justice League. Yeah, it makes all the sense in the world, but it's a bit of a long shot for a first Justice League movie. Now, the last one of could be in there, but it's a long shot, is Plastic Man. Only reason I bring this up is recently, Rainn Wilson, the guy that played, Dwight Schrute in The Office, brought up the fact that he's like, oh, I brought up to James Gunn many times that I would love to play Plastic Man. I've really been hounding him on that recently. I'm like, really? You for Plastic Man? That's interesting. But Rainn Wilson and James Gunn are friends. They've worked together for many, many years. They worked together on a movie called Super, which is super underrated. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But it's very James Gunn if you haven't seen it. I could see Rainn Wilson being in the DC universe at some point. Do I buy him as Plastic Man? I don't know. It's a little bit out there even for me. It's a bit of a stretch. What are we doing? I'm sorry. That was just terrible. But next category I'll talk about here is members that I think will be a part of the Justice League itself, but probably will not be major characters in the movie. Like characters that could absolutely show up, but might be more supporting characters or cameos, kind of just to flesh out the rest of the team, just like an episode of Justice League Unlimited. And I think that's basically any member of the Justice Gang that we saw in Superman and the beginning of Peacemaker Season 2. So names like Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, or Hawk Girl, or Mr. Terrific, or Metamorpho. Well, those last two we'll talk more in a little bit here, but especially Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, I would love to see him more. I thought he was perfect, and especially because I really, really need to see Guy Gardner get punched in the face by Batman in a Justice League movie. I need that to happen, please, especially if it's Nathan Fillion, who has openly talked about wanting to get punched in the face by Batman. I don't think Guy Gardner will be our primary Green Lantern of the DC universe. We'll talk about who I think it will be later, because he's absolutely one of the 7. But I could see him being a supporting character. Now, Hawk Girl is interesting because I can kind of go either way with her. I think she could be a supporting character, but I think she could also be one of the core 7 like she was in the Justice League animated series. I'm not going one way or the other. I will lean a little bit more towards supporting character, but I wouldn't be mad if she was one of the primaries either. I could absolutely see that happening. I went with a different name that isn't in the DC universe yet to kind of take her spot. But if you want to swap in Hawk Girl, it makes all the sense in the world to me. Now, I mentioned Mr. Terrific and Metamorpho. I kind of see them being in Justice League, but I could also see them being spun off into a Terrifics movie. In the comics, it's a team that Mr. Terrific assembles called the Terrifics, with him, Metamorpho, and Plastic Man. He's coming around. He's coming all the way full circle. I can absolutely see that being a spin-off that James Gunn makes of those members. They could potentially be in the Justice League, but they could also offshoot and do their own, like, heroic super team. But that could just be me super speculating here. Now, the last 2 names here, speaking of super, I don't necessarily know if she'd be a main character in a Justice League. Maybe just because it feels weird for her to be side by side with Superman if we're just going with a 7, if that makes sense. Like, I think we're getting a Superman and Supergirl movie. That works for me. But if we're doing a Justice League, I think that spot could be filled with somebody else with a more unique skill set. I think Supergirl could be on the team, just not one of the main characters. Now, the other one is a character that just recently got a project announced, and I could see that opening the door to more stories down the road, but I don't see there being a main Justice Leaguer, and that is Mr. Miracle, also known as Scott Free. Now, he's getting an adult animated show, I believe, and we're getting Tom King, the guy who wrote the Mr. Miracle comic, which if you have not read that, that's fantastic. He's, I believe, writing the show, so that could potentially be our gateway into the new gods. So characters like Big Barda, Orion, Darkseid, Granny Goodness. I think that could be a ton of fun to explore that avenue eventually, so we would have that in if we had Mr. Miracle. I just think a lot of the characters that we're introducing with these TV shows are going to be big players going forward. We wouldn't just blindly give them shows, if that makes sense. So if Mr. Miracle is getting a show, I think it's because he's going to be a Justice Leaguer, but maybe I could be reading too much into it and they're just giving a show just because they believe in the source material. Okay, I've wasted enough of your time. What are the 7 that I think? What are the 7 members of the Justice League that'll be our main Justice League, at least for the first movie in the DC universe? Now, again, these are names that I think James Gunn will be going with, not necessarily my personal picks, just because there's 1 or 2 that will be noticeably absent, but I think it's just because we'll use them down the road, if that makes sense. But in terms of you gotta have them, gotta be the Trinity: Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman. Like, you can't not have them at this point. I know there's been comics in the past, specifically Justice League comics, that didn't have Superman or didn't have Wonder Woman just because the cast of characters has revolved so much over the years. But I think at this point in the cultural zeitgeist, if you didn't have Superman or you didn't have Wonder Woman, two of the most identifiable characters in all of DC Comics, people would freak out. Like, the casual people would be like, well, where's these people? You have to have Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. They're just prerequisites. They take up that space because they're icons of the comic book world. Now, is Batman going to be Robert Pattinson? No, I don't think it will be. I know people keep getting their hopes up, and I kind of keep doing that too, just because every time I think 100% James Gunn has ruled out that Robert Pattinson will be the Batman of this universe, and it's gonna be two separate universes, he says something weird, or he phrases something in such an odd way that makes me go, hold up, what did you mean by that? I feel like there's some weird plans at play here that we don't know about, or they're waiting on some stuff. But again, I think for the most part, it will be a separate Batman. An older, but maybe not too old, maybe early 40s Batman that isn't Robert Pattinson. It's not. But let's look at the other characters that I feel like are 100% locks at this point, or as close to 100% lock as we can possibly be, with a Green Lantern. Yeah, we're gonna get a Green Lantern in the Justice League. It just makes sense. But I already said it's not gonna be Guy. I really don't think it's gonna be Guy. As much as I wouldn't mind it being Guy, I also don't think it's gonna be Hal Jordan either. As much as the fact that we already have the picture of Hal Jordan and John Stewart as our one and only picture for the Lantern show, at least at the time of recording this video, I don't think it's gonna be Hal Jordan either. I think it's gonna be the guy standing next to him. I think John Stewart is going to be our main Green Lantern, and I, for one, am super on board with that. John Stewart is actually my favorite Green Lantern just because I grew up with the Justice League animated series. I think there's so much potential in a John Stewart story. I love John Stewart so much, and I don't think Hal is necessarily making out of that Lantern show alive. I think somebody else is gonna pick up his ring and kind of become Earth's main Lantern. Now, that's not to say we aren't going to get some other Lanterns, like I said, Guy is already out there. Maybe we'll get Kyle. That's for a specific friend of mine that I know is a huge Kyle fan. I don't know if we'll get Kyle, but maybe we'll get Kyle. I just think the Green Lantern of the Justice League will be John Stewart for now, and I'm on board with that. So let's move on very, very briefly away from the ones that I feel very locked in and pretty positive that they're going to happen to my most out of left field. I'm very much on the fence if this is actually happening or not, but I needed a slot, and I'm like, you know what? I could kind of see it. Is Black Canary. Now, I know I said we don't know what the future of Green Arrow is. In the past, James Gunn has also played coy about certain things, like, well, I wasn't lying about this from a certain point of view. Like, he's very specific with his wording, so maybe he doesn't know what's happening with Green Arrow, but he knows what's happening with Black Canary. The only reason I'm going with like Black Canary over like a Hawk Girl or Power Girl or even Supergirl here is I feel like James Gunn will be using a lot of different Justice Leagues as his inspiration. When he's crafting his different stories, he takes inspiration from various different time periods in comics. Look at the Superman costume. You've got the Kingdom Come Superman logo, but then you've got the high collar from the New 52. You got the trunks back from all the classic Superman stuff. His costume is a combination of various different time periods in the comics, and I think that's what's going to be the case here for Justice League. But I think one of the ones that he's really going to be drawing off of is the Keith Giffen run from the 80s, in which case Black Canary was a core member of that team. It's a really great comic run, and I very much see a lot of those members potentially being in this universe. But I think Black Canary has enough unique qualities that could not necessarily make her like the Black Widow type of the group, but she could ground the team in a certain humanity, bring the more human side of it. Plus, she's one of the best hand-to-hand fighters in all of the DC universe, so she could have a lot of fun action set pieces that would be different than the other heroes. This is my out of left field. I don't know if I actually believe that we're getting Black Canary in the DC universe, but if we are going off the Geffen run, that's a big character from that run. Another big character from that run that I am a little bit more confident in is Martian Manhunter. I definitely think Martian Manhunter is in the Justice League, and we might see him sooner rather than later. The thing is, and I mentioned this in the last video, we keep getting references from James Gunn on his social medias about Chocos. They're basically the DC Universe's version of Oreos. You know who loves Chocos? Martian Manhunter. It is like his favorite snack. I think it's been a very deliberate choice that James Gunn keeps mentioning Chacos, and I think Martian Manhunter is that one character, among many other characters, but he's one of those characters that fans have been clamoring for so many years, that they're just like, he's so cool, he's got such a unique power set, but there's also so many interesting avenues that you can go storytelling wise with Martian Manhunter. I really think he's just a lock at this point. In terms of confidence, for me, it goes the big three, they're guaranteed. Then I'm pretty confident Jon Stewart's gonna be in. Then Martian Manhunter's not far behind. Like, I might even put that on the same level and maybe slightly above Jon Stewart being the specific Green Lantern in the Justice League. I feel pretty confident we're getting Martian Manhunter sooner rather than later, but he will absolutely be in the Justice League. Now, here's where things are gonna get a little bit weird with the 7th and final spot in this Justice League, at least for the first movie that I think James Gunn's gonna go with. I think for the first Justice League movie, the 7th and final spot on the roster will go to Booster Gold. Yeah, out of left field, but I don't think that out of left field. I think James Gunn is going to be pulling from a bunch of different Justice League eras and time periods. Maybe he'll go with like Justice League New Frontier or the Geffen run, which if that's the case, Booster Gold is a big part of that storyline. And I really like Booster Gold there. It also kind of helps that Booster Gold got announced to be getting his own TV show, which apparently was in production development issues for a little bit there. Like, it was kind of stalling, but according to James Gunn, it's back on track and they're heading in a good direction. I think there's so much potential in the character of Booster Gold. And he's one of those weird, wacky, and out there characters that James Gunn really like. So I can absolutely see him leaning into that and going, okay, the general audience might not know who this guy is, but if we cast right and if we write this character well, he will be just as beloved as a Superman, or to modern day, a Peacemaker. Peacemaker is one of those characters that people didn't really know, and now they're a household name because of good casting, but also good writing. I fully expect that to be the case for Booster Gold. Do I have 100% confidence in this? No. But I don't think they would be giving him this TV show if they didn't have plans for him down the road. He was a big part in that 80s run. He's getting this show. Maybe they're priming him to be a Justice League at some point. I know we're missing some big names like Flash, like Aquaman. James Gunn has said that Flash and Aquaman are a few years away. Plus, we got them fairly recently. We can mix up the roster a little bit, at least for this first outing, then introduce them later on. Maybe in the second one, we bring them in, kind of just rotate them out a little bit. Justice League has had a whole bunch of different people over time. We can swap out one or two names for now and put in some new, fresh names that introduces audiences to new members and new stories. Well, what do you guys think? Who do you think will be the 7 core members of James Gunn's Justice League whenever we think that movie's happening? When do you think that movie will even be coming out? Whatever your thoughts, let me know down in the comments below. It's like hearing from you guys. And as always, if you like what you're seeing and want to see more, subscribe to the channel. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals.